the U.S. Census Bureau released the 2020 census results. But first, I want to go back to the projections. This is the change in seats based on the S3 2020 population projections. So please do note that the electoral vote number each state has is different. You need to add 2 to whatever number you see here, which is why Maine has 4 electoral votes and North Dakota has 3, and Wisconsin would have 10. So quite a few projections here. California projected to lose 1 seat, Minnesota, Illinois, Michigan, Ohio, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, New York, and Rhode Island. And the states expected to gain 1 seat: Montana, Oregon, Colorado, Arizona, North Carolina, and Florida. And Texas expected to gain 3 seats. Looking at some other projections actually projected Alabama would also lose a seat. This is from 270 to win, and Florida would gain an extra seat. But now let's just take a look at these census results. This is the projected population growth. 4 states are projected to lose population, but in actuality that was only 3. If I'm not wrong, Vermont, West Virginia, and Illinois. It's either Vermont or Connecticut. I really don't remember. But many states are having their population grow, especially in the Mountain West, especially in Idaho, Montana, and North Dakota. It's not seen as much in Montana, but in Idaho you can really see transfer of a lot of expats and Democratic-leaning whites to Idaho are moving there because especially of this age of remote work. And in Florida there's a huge spike. In Texas there's a huge spike too. In Georgia there's a big spike. The Sun Belt is doing relatively well, especially in Arizona, Texas, and Florida and Georgia, but some parts are having negligible growths. I mean, Alabama and the reason Alabama didn't actually lose a seat was because it had a good growth here, unlike Mississippi and Louisiana. Mississippi, which had a 0.2 growth, but Louisiana had a 2.4. New Mexico had a 2.0. So the states that are actually gaining are states that had a huge amount of growth. Now, if we take a look at this, Utah isn't gaining a seat, but yet the chart shows it has 17.4%, greater than Colorado, which gained a seat. Well, it's because Colorado has a greater population, and so basically it looks at the total population to distribute these seats. Now, if we look at it by age, many states have a decline in under 18 populations. In California and New Mexico, a huge number there. Illinois, Michigan, the New England, it seems like all the locations which actually have growths are the Cascadia region, the Mountain West, parts of the Sun Belt, and the eastern seaboard, Tennessee. It's quite interesting, actually, quite random to be honest. And if you look at the race and ethnic minority groups, that's also interesting. It shows greater Hispanic communities in the Sun Belt, in the western Sun Belt, African Americans in the eastern parts of the Sun Belt, mixed minorities in California, in a huge number of them in Oklahoma, as well as American Indians and Alaska Natives, in New Mexico, in Alaska, in Arizona, in Colorado and Utah. But those are the main things. But interestingly, big cities are registering a comeback. California has lost a congressional seat, and this is the projected map. Oregon expected to, so this one does include Alabama, which would give Texas 2. But as you can see, it's very different. So California's population went here: Idaho, Montana, Oregon, Arizona, Colorado, and Texas. That's where most of the population went. Now, if we take a look at something interesting, New York, it does lose a seat, it meets that, but it came 89 people short. Now, if we take a look at this, If New York had 89 more people, it would have held on to its House seat. Now, interestingly enough, Minnesota had a high rate of counting, unlike New York, which, especially in the pandemic, did not count that many residents. But that, if they just counted just 90 more, 89 more, 100 more, anywhere there, they would have held on to that one seat. New York's congressional delegation is continuing a steady decline. It progressive lawmakers blamed Governor Cuomo, and demographers had expected New York to lose one or two seats, and the fact that they lost nearly one was welcome and frustrating. And yeah, that's quite interesting. And it's gonna be time for redistricting. But now let's look at the census results. California expected to lose one. Illinois will lose one. Michigan will lose one. Ohio, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, and New York will lose one. Colorado, Oregon, Montana, North Carolina, and Florida will all gain one, and Texas will lose two. Now, if we compare that to the projection here, Alabama did not lose one, and Rhode Island did not lose one. Arizona did not gain one, and Texas. So the three states that did not lose were Minnesota, Alabama, and Rhode Island. Arizona did not gain an extra electoral vote. Florida only gained one, and Texas only gained two. And that's the major difference. And extremely interesting, the South taking a bigger margin, the West doing so. Midwest or Northeast rapidly declining. They started off at 150. Back then they were at 150, and then the West was less than 50, but it just kept going up. And interestingly, several of the states gaining or losing seats are key swing states. Texas soon looks to be a swing state. Florida, North Carolina, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Ohio, many of them. Interestingly enough, in every state, Connecticut, where's that? Yeah, so in our many states, they grew slower. Michigan, New York, Massachusetts, Vermont, Maine, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, so many of these states, except on the West Coast, they're almost all going down. Texas, Florida doing well, of course, but that does, looking at the new House control, Republicans would only need to flip 5 House seats. Some big states of the Midwest and Northeast that have backed Democrats will lose congressional seats. Texas and Florida are obviously the biggest winners. California at what's 1.53 seats after the 2000 census. It started plateaued in 2010, and now it's coming down. New York also declining. Pennsylvania and New York, both their influence rapidly declining from 1910 to what it has now. And looking at the power in these states that are gaining seats. So first, let's look at this. So in the states that are losing, Democrats control 2, Republicans control 2. So over here it's kind of even because you have 2 independent commissions, 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, and a split. So it doesn't really affect it that much. And over here, though, Republicans control out of these 7 seats. Democrats control 1, Independents control 2, and North Carolina, Florida's 1 seat, and Texas's 2 seats. Add up to 4, so Republicans control 4. And it's likely that all 4 of these seats would go to the Republican Party. So while 2 Republicans might be cut out in New York and in Illinois, a Democrat would be cut out in Ohio. However, in West Virginia, a Republican would have to be cut out. So looking at this, to be honest, Republicans are winning here because Democrats get 1 seat here, assuming they get it from. Okay, let's take a look at this. Ohio is going to lose a Democrat. West Virginia is going to lose a Republican. New York and Illinois are going to lose a Republican. Pennsylvania, Michigan, California, it's going to be competitive, so it doesn't matter. So coming out of this, we have one Democrat losing a seat and 3 Republicans losing the seat. But if we look here, 4 Republicans are gaining their seat, and in Montana as well. So that puts it at 5 Republicans here, and in Oregon, one Democrat, so it gets canceled out. and in Colorado an independent commission. So a net of one extra seat for Republicans. Plus, in 2022, it's extremely easy for Republicans to win. So in Vermont, it was basically right almost all on average. Oh no, districts. Sorry. Um, so in these, all the white ones are at-large districts, but Montana's district grew heavily. Denver, some parts of the Denver, Colorado grew heavily. Oregon did. Parts of North Carolina, Houston city area. So Democrats will do slightly better in Houston because it is quite gerrymandered, but because of quite a bit of the population is around there, they would have to give another seat here. West Virginia, Plateau going very low. Michigan as well. West Virginia is where you can see the greatest decline. Illinois just slightly lower, and Connecticut also slightly lower. But yeah, interesting results. And looking at the details, Illinois losing it narrowly. They almost stayed flat, but they lost it by 0.14 points. Mississippi going down 0.20, almost staying flat, and West Virginia going down. I was mistaken. I thought it was either Vermont or Connecticut. I was wrong. Sorry, but it's just really interesting. And in North Carolina, it's Roy Cooper can't veto it. So looking at the map, Republicans are heavily in favor of this redistricting cycle. And the other fact is they have a net gain of 1 seat. That would mean they only need 4 more seats to flip the chamber in 2022. That would mean it's really easy, to be honest. There are many vulnerable Democrats: Abigail Spanberger of Virginia, Elisa Slotkin of Michigan, Ron Kind of Wisconsin, Connor Lamb of Pennsylvania. All these are likely incumbents who could just lose there. But interestingly, in Ohio, Tim Ryan is likely to be redistricted out of his district, but he was planning on running for the Senate. But I'm just going to be watching that state. But thank you for watching. Really interesting results, and I do plan to make a video on how this will affect the 2024 election and the House elections further. If you like my content, please give me a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button. Tane po.